I like using this phone. This is what I told myself after a few weeks of using the Xiaomi Redmi 8A. Now of course with this being a budget phone, it's not going to impress anyone with an elegant premium design, nor is it going to surprise anyone with a list of high-end features. What it does offer though is a modest smartphone experience despite the very low price and the entry-level specs. First launched last year, the Redmi 8A follows in the footsteps of the affordable Redmi 6A and 7A, which had their own pros and cons as far as Android phones go. Now Xiaomi has a reputation of making good hardware at a very low price point, and the Redmi 8A takes a right step in this direction. Now you don't have to spend 300 or 200 or even 150 bucks on this phone. That's how affordable this thing is. This smartphone comes priced at just above 100 bucks, which makes this one of the cheapest phones around. But in a vast ocean of entry-level Android phones, what makes the Redmi 8A stand out? If you're planning on getting this phone knowing full well that it is a budget device, then go on ahead with this purchase. But if you want to know the answer to the question, what am I getting for this price? Then you might want to watch this video first. Upon picking up the Redmi 8A, the first thing you'll notice is the large 6.2-inch IPS display. Now the way that Xiaomi has designed this phone is pretty similar to how a lot of Android phones look these days. You get a chin with branding at the bottom, and up top is a notch which houses the 8 megapixel front-facing camera. The display brightness maxes out at 400 nits, which is pretty average. The display has a low 1520 by 720p resolution, something that's pretty common with phones in this price range. What's not very common is the layer of Gorilla Glass 5, which protects the entire front of the phone, which I have to say is a very nice addition. Flip the phone over and you're greeted by the single 12 megapixel camera and LED flash. We'll talk more about this later. The back panel of the phone is wrapped in a textured matte design, and according to Xiaomi, this is covered in a splash-proof nano coating, which is pretty similar to what Motorola does on some of its phones. Now say what you will about plastic phones, but I really like this design. To be honest, it kinda reminds me of the Nokia Lumia 1320, which in my opinion had a nice minimalist look to it. On the bottom you'll find two good things, a headphone jack and a USB Type-C port, which is something that again, isn't usually found on budget smartphones. I only said two good things, as the loudspeaker lacks that bass-filled punch. It's clear and gets loud, but it sounds average for the most part.
I am Razio, firstborn of his lieutenants. I stood with Cain.
Where the phone takes a hit the most is with the processing power. The phone runs on Qualcomm's low-end Snapdragon 439 chipset, and this is backed up by 2 gigs of RAM. Of course, you won't be getting any Snapdragon 800 or 600 series chips at this price, but for the most part, the phone still manages to run decently with the limited hardware, at least from my experience using it. Basic smartphone tasks such as web browsing, social media, and navigating around Android 9 with MIUI is functional for the most part. You do get some app restarts every now and then, but then again, this is to be expected. If you stick to running a few apps at a time, you should be good. What surprised me the most though is that the Redmi 8A can run most games, provided that they aren't graphically intensive. I did manage to play a few games and they actually ran pretty well. This isn't exactly a gaming phone, but a lot of simple games will run fine with the limited hardware. Here's a quick clip to give you an idea of how the phone runs with games like Sonic Runner's Adventure, Riptide GP, and Monster Hunter Stories. Where the Redmi 8A truly shines though is with its battery performance. Xiaomi stuck a pretty large 5000 mAh battery on this thing, and honestly that's a lot of power for less money. The low-res display and the small processor don't consume that much battery power, and if you're after a long-lasting phone, this is absolutely ideal. I was able to squeeze out around an entire day of battery use, and I got really good screen time, usually between 7 to 9 or even 10 hours of use, depending on what apps you're running. Of course, the battery will drain faster if you play games on it or use mobile data, but in general, it will be able to last you from morning until night without any problems. Now let's talk about that camera. The Redmi 8A comes with the same 12 megapixel sensor found on the Google Pixel 3 and the Poco F1. And while this is the same Sony IMX363 sensor, the performance is a long way from that of the Pixel. Let me put it this way. You can get good shots on this phone. There's a decent portrait mode, and subject shot in good light will give you decent results with above average saturation and contrast. However, it lacks the software and optical image stabilization found on the Pixel, which in turn affects the overall quality. Photos are good, but they certainly aren't the best either. The lack of OIS on this phone is most evident when shooting video. You'll need a bit of patience when working with this camera. I'll publish a separate video highlighting this phone's video performance, so stay tuned for that. So, if you're still dead set on getting this phone, get it for the following reasons: an affordable price, a powerful battery, Gorilla Glass 5, and a screen to watch movies on. This isn't a miracle budget phone like the Poco F1. It does have its limitations, but at just over $100, you're getting a lot of phone for a lot less cash. If you enjoy this, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Once again, thanks for watching.